infrastructure. A long campaign is now.
This is the car market in Mogadishu.
NATO's military success against
many Western nations.
This is on assignment. Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our show of Stories Behind the Stories. I'm Imran Siddiqui.
And I'm Alex Villarreal. First up, what it's like to be Muslim in America as violence in the name of Islam fills headlines worldwide.
A cheaper, long-lasting, and universal antivenom for snakebites could it be on the way?
He's called the last man on the moon, a distinction he would rather not hold.
And to be young, make a movie, and have it shown at the White House, how do you get to do that?
We're about to find out in this episode, so as they say in Hollywood, lights, camera, action.
Homegrown terrorism. It's a threat U.S. authorities have monitored closely since the 2001 terrorist attacks in the United States. Much of the focus has been on Muslims becoming radicalized.
But a study by several universities finds that American Muslims on the whole are unmoved by Islamic militants' violent appeals. VOA religion correspondent Jerome Sokolovsky went to the state of North Carolina to find out more. Take a look.
Growing up as an American Muslim, Sally Ayad was not affected by political problems in the Middle East.
The news, the things that happen overseas, we didn't have any of that growing up. And we weren't asked to condemn it or justify it in any way.
For Muslims at her mosque in Raleigh, North Carolina, and around the country, it was much the same. But now many feel they're often regarded as potential terrorists.
Now, in talking to some of these Muslim Americans, you were able to sort of get a picture of who are the Muslims that live in this area. Talk to us about that story.
Right. This was actually the second story I did in a series of two from North Carolina about the Muslim community there. And having seen who the victims were, these young, professional people who seemed like anybody else, aside from their religion, they seemed like kids, really.
Right. They were students, right?
They were students.
Yeah.
And so I asked myself, like, who were they? Where did they come from? Interestingly, in this part of North Carolina, there were many research jobs as a result of the change from, it used to be a tobacco-producing area.
Once better known for its tobacco production, this area known as the Triangle began to attract technology companies and research labs back in the 60s. The transformation of this region into a high-tech corridor with universities like this one also turned it into a magnet for highly educated immigrants. And for many among them, including Muslims, it was the fulfillment of the American dream.
This is my family, basically, here.
Mohammed El Gamal owns a computer technology firm and says his religion was not an issue before.
I think the Muslims lived like any other religion, any other faith in North Carolina for a very, very long time.
Jerome, why were you interested in it and why did you want to cover it?
I've been asking myself, like many Americans, why do we have this gigantic security apparatus aimed at stopping terrorism? Not just terrorism committed in the name of Islam, but there's also right-wing terrorism cases as well. But if you look at that, what this study shows, that and other studies as well, is that if you look at just Muslim terrorism and right-wing terrorism, it's still a very minuscule part of the overall threat to public safety or threats to public safety in this country.
Since the terrorist attacks of 2001, much concern has focused on American Muslim communities such as this one. But one influential study suggests that focus is misplaced. Researcher Charles Kurzman counted the number of Muslims suspected of planning or perpetrating political violence during this time.
And we've identified about 250 individuals who've been arrested for or who've engaged in acts that might be called terrorism.
250 people may seem like a lot, but it's a tiny fraction of this country's estimated population of about 3 million Muslims.
Does the religion now, because of these elements that have taken it and perverted it and used it in the name, committed acts of violence in the name of their religion, what needs to happen?
Right. There's no question that the large majority of Muslims around the world are peaceful people who just want to go about their business, live their lives like anybody else. Part of the problem is that in the Middle East, and in some other Muslim countries, there are people who are claiming that if we go back, we meaning we Muslims, go back to a time in the medieval period when Islam was predominant, when it was a kind of, we were creating this paradise on earth, everything will be better.
When they see a study like this and when they watch your report, what is the interpretation that you're hoping people are able to make from it?
Well, I think when we see studies like this, we should all realize that we should calm down a little bit and think clearly about these issues. I'm not trying to paper over any kind of problems with terrorism. It's very real. Many people do ask, myself included, why do we have such a big security apparatus? But I also remind myself that all it takes is one serious terrorist attack and you see the utility of that. But we just have to keep asking that question and keep having this, this conversation.
And you can add your own voice to that conversation. Please write to us on Facebook, and you can find our page by searching VOA On Assignment.
All right, we're taking a break now. Up next, I talk with our science reporter about some promising new snakebite treatment research. You're watching On Assignment. Poisonous snake bites kill or disable thousands of people in Sub-Saharan Africa each year, but scientists in Britain are working on a serum that could counteract the venom from all Sub-Saharan snakes. Well, joining me now for more is VOA science reporter George Putich. George, great to have you on the show.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, now tell us about, there are a lot of dangerous snakes in Sub-Saharan Africa. How bad is it?
It's very bad. There are more than 20 dangerous species that can kill people, and actually they do. 32,000 people approximately die every year, and 100,000 are disabled. Those who survive usually have limbs that they cannot use anymore, and those are mostly rural people. And when it strikes a family breadwinner, then the whole family suffers.
And a lot of times this is happening when people are working, right?
Yes.
Talk to us about some of the current challenges with antivenom.
Antivenom is very difficult to produce, and it's very costly. It takes a long time. The venomous snakes are milked for their venom. The venom is injected into large animals who do not suffer, and they produce antibodies that are extracted from their blood and prepared for the administration to the victims. But it's a costly process. It takes a long time. The serum is very vulnerable to heat. It has to be refrigerated and has to be administered several times when someone is bitten. So the cost may go up to $600 per treatment, and it's for many people it's unaffordable.
We've got a clip we want to show now. Now this is from Dr. Robert Harrison, the scientist featured in your piece, and he's explaining to us how this new idea of a universal antivenom will work. Check it out.
We're going to do that by identifying the proteins that are unique to all the other species, and taking these unique proteins, i.e. different from the saw-scale viper, the puff adder, or the spitting cobra, and add that to the venoms from the original three.
All right, so George, how does this new process compare to how antivenoms have currently been produced?
The new process should be much quicker. They are trying to design a synthetic antivenom so that they will not use animals anymore. They're trying to find out which of the proteins in different venoms are similar to each other.
We'll continue to follow this, I'm sure. Anything else? Any last words about what you want people to know about this?
The only thing is that it's not going to be very soon. It's going to be in about 3.5 years. And the scientists expect that in 2018 they will be able to do the ultimate test and then have it ready for the general public.
All right, George, thank you so much. George
You're
Putich, VOA science reporter. We are going to be taking a break now. On the other side, we introduce you to the last man to walk on the moon. No joke. You're watching On Assignment. At the recent South by Southwest Film Festival in Austin, Texas, one documentary told the story of the last human being to stand on the moon, and that was U.S. astronaut Eugene Cernan. It's now been 42 years since he returned from that trip, and he is not happy that no one else has gone since.
And Cernan advocates a more vigorous space program, a vision he shared with VOA Houston correspondent Greg Flakers. On Assignment's Rebecca Ward caught up with Greg to chat about it.
The Last Man on the Moon is the name of the film, and it's a pretty apt description. Tell me about the film's storyline.
Well, Rebecca, the film is about the last man to actually walk on the surface of the moon, Eugene Cernan, who was the commander of Apollo 17. Now, this mission took place in December of 1972.
We have ignition.
In 1972, Captain Eugene Cernan and two fellow astronauts began what would become the last mission to the moon, Apollo 17. On December 14, 1972, after scratching his daughter's initials in the lunar dust and setting up a remote camera, he stepped into the lunar lander and left the moon.
Ignition. Right away, Houston. Vector grid.
And not only has no one returned to the moon since then, no astronaut has gone beyond low Earth orbit. When he was there, he assumed that at some point somebody would be coming back there to the moon, that some future mission would arrive there. But now it's been more than 42 years, and people have been born and gone into middle age in that time, and no one has returned there.
So this must have been something of a labor of love for him. What does he hope that the film, or what kind of message does he hope the film conveys, especially to those born after 1972?
Well, Eugene Cernan, like many of the former astronauts, really would like to see this program invigorated. He would like to see more ambitious goals, and he would like to have young people today dreaming of doing something like he did. And so he's really pushing for more education and a bigger program, something that could give kids something to aspire to.
Would I go back in a half a second?
So getting back to Cernan, and he's, here he is, this astronaut, basically he's done something really amazing. But he also seems to be in the film just kind of a regular guy. You see him joking around with his buddies. So tell me about this regular guy.
Well, having met him, I can tell you he really is a regular guy. If you ran into him at the rodeo or at the, the local grocery store even, you would just think of him just as an ordinary fellow. You would never imagine that he's someone who's done this incredible thing. They bring out a lot of it by having an old buddy of his, Fred Baldwin, Baldy Baldwin, in the film with him out on his ranch and going around with him riding horses and that kind of thing. And Baldwin, in the typical way men joke with each other, he's always kind of kidding him and joking with him about things. And you can see the camaraderie there and the respect they have for each other. And I caught up with Baldwin after the screening. He came out in his big cowboy hat, and I spotted him and asked him a few questions.
He's one of the finest aviators that I've ever been around. But he and I used to fly wing in a diamond formation and that, but super guy.
Well, you sound like you're a bit of a space buff, Greg, yourself. So how was it meeting, an astronaut?
Well, yeah, I've met others like Buzz Aldrin and some of the people who've been on the space shuttle missions. But to meet the man who was the last person to actually go on a moon mission and actually walk on the surface of the moon was really interesting. And to hear his perspective on things, although he is disappointed in the way things have turned out and would like to see a bigger and more vigorous space program.
Am I disappointed today where we are? Of course I am. It's devastating to be in a position. 42 years ago, I was walking on a moon. In the 60s and 70s, we were sending human beings to the moon every 2 months, to the moon. And today we can't even get an American in space on American hardware. to our own space station. But what goes around will come around. And I do believe that in a lifetime of many of you out there, certainly most of you, you'll see us go back to the moon.
Go back to the moon and maybe take a trip to Mars, which is in the works. Thanks so much to Eugene, Greg, and Rebecca for that story.
And speaking of the moon, a group of young filmmakers from across the United States were likely over the moon when they joined President Obama recently at the second annual White House Student Film Festival. 15 short films were chosen from more than 1,500 entries by students ages 6 through 18.
VOA's Julie Tabo covered the screening and told Anna Simon's Lisa Vora all about it.
Oh, hello, everybody, and welcome to the second annual White House Film Festival.
President Obama welcomed the young filmmakers to the White House for a special event honoring their movies. The president was joined by movie stars who congratulated the students for their extraordinary achievements.
We are capable of giving so much.
The 15 films screened at the White House Festival shared a common theme: the impact of giving back.
As a 6-year-old, I've seen with my own eyes. Last spring, I had the idea to dress up like a superhero and help the homeless.
The impact of giving back. I love the theme. Tell me a little bit about all the different films that you saw and how they were able to visually show the impact of giving back.
Well, it was amazing. Of course, there was 1,500 submissions when the call went out for K through 12 students all across the country to submit their films. And there was quite a wonderful variety. You have Sadie Menendez, who, as she described in our interview, started with an original song, We Starts With Me, which I thought was the perfect theme, right? And that evolved into a film, and they got the whole second grade class at her friend's school to participate in this film. That was what they were looking for, is, you know, what videos, what films that were submitted encapsulated that theme of giving back.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, I think they were very pleased with the results and the feedback that they got and the response that they got.
My name is Archer Hadley.
Tell me about the Archer Hadley story.
Archer Hadley is so inspirational because here's a young man who is confined to a wheelchair. He has cerebral palsy, and he really struggled with trying to just basically get into his school.
I got stuck out in the rain, and that was the inspiration for my project. And I needed to raise $40,000, and I raised over $87,000.
One of the things they did is they had people sitting in a wheelchair all day. And to know what it's like to be in a wheelchair, to navigate doors, to navigate corridors.
They actually had people sitting in.
They actually had
the
people
entire time
sitting
to actually
in
understand
wheelchairs.
what he went through.
Exactly, to see what life is like from his perspective.
Yeah,
as a person with a disability in a wheelchair, and what challenges they face on a day-to-day basis at their school.
Today I was nominated for the Wheelchair Challenge. And so all day I will be in the wheelchair. I can't get out of my wheelchair. I'll use the elevators, go to all my classes.
Champs, culturally helping them make it positive success. Champs, they always do their best and they do what's right. Champs.
This group of people who came together to do this great rap music video wanted to emphasize that there's also something very positive, and a lot of good things can come out of that community. It isn't all about violence and guns, that it's about community and love and support and helping one another.
Success, champs. They always do their best and they do what's right. Champs, want to win in every city.
We were at the White House. Yeah, the president's there. There are famous actors there. What is it like being there?
Well, you know, I must tell you, even though, you know, I've been around the block a few times as a journalist, being at the White House is always a big thrill. Just being in the same room as the president and having the celebrities there, you know, Hillary Swank and Cal Penn. But having said that, I can only imagine what it must have been like for the students and their families who were there, being, in many cases, called on by the president. I mean, he sort of referred to Noah as missing a tooth.
He's missing teeth.
What are your impressions after doing this piece?
While we were outside interviewing some of the filmmakers, something really wonderful happened. Archer was just wrapping up his interview with us, and suddenly I see members of the Champs team walk over, and they just spontaneously stood around his wheelchair and broke into their rap song. And Archer sat there just soaking it all in, and it was just a spontaneous gesture of friendship and support. I just remember thinking at the time, this is what the festival is all about. Let's all do gestures, big and small, to reach out to one another, support one another, and help make the world a better place.
Born to win in every situation in life.
Good job, guys. Good job. That's great.
Oh, such an inspiring story, and what a moment to see them just spontaneously breaking out into song, right, for Archer?
Yeah.
And the fact that Julie was there to capture it, you know, it's very clear from what she said that it was quite the special time for her to be there.
Perfect timing for both of them.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. From now film to fashion, many of the world's biggest designers create their fashions in New York City, but often those designs are actually manufactured overseas.
Well, now New York is providing economic incentives to encourage more manufacturing in the Big Apple itself and entice emerging designers to take root there. VOA's Daniela Schreier has the story.
In New York City, the fashion industry accounts for more than 5% of the workforce and generates nearly $18 billion a year in retail sales. Despite economic ups and downs, wholesalers, manufacturers, and designers have been doing business here in New York's garment district since the 1880s. Mayor Bill de Blasio says the industry is integral to the city.
Not only a functionally key sector of our economy, but one of the most iconic industries in this city, something so deeply identified with the character and the personality of New York City, and we want to make sure it stays that way and, in fact, become stronger.
This year, the city will allocate $15 million to encourage emerging designers and manufacturers to create fashions locally through a program called Made in New York. But manufacturing in New York has limitations: sky-high rents, an aging workforce, and outdated technology.
We lack some of the technology that we need to do the complicated knitting techniques and laser cutting and some of the popular styles that the people are buying right now. You can't make them here.
The Made in New York program provides incentives to factories that invest in technology and workforce development. So far, the city has granted more than $1 million to eligible factories. Kenny Huang owns the local factory where Leota designs are manufactured. It's a family business he runs with his wife, Carmen. He says there is not enough consistent fashion manufacturing work to keep his seamstresses busy year-round. To help fix that, the city created an electronic platform connecting local designers with local production facilities. Hopefully, that means more businesses for factories and skilled workers. Plus, if Wong invests in technology upgrades, he could qualify for cash incentives that would position his factory as an even more attractive option for New York-based designers. This dress is 100% made in New York, a distinction New Yorkers hope to see more often in the future. Daniela Schreier, VOA News, New York.
And with that, we are nearly 100% done with our show.
Yes, we have 1% left, and that is we're coming back next week for a look at how our VOA reporters are covering the Iran nuclear deal and the political controversy surrounding it.
And in the meantime, you can find On Assignment anytime at voanews.com, YouTube, and also on Facebook, where we always welcome your comments and questions.
On behalf of everyone from Washington, goodbye.